Happy Thursday here on the Scarlet Faithful podcast. I'm Aaron Brightman previewing Rutgers Northwestern Thursday night, 6:30 BTN. Huge game for the Scarlet Knights, 3-game winning streak. This is a huge swing game for them. I really think that this team, regardless of implications of the postseason or what may happen, they're on a run here that I think is sustainable, and I think they're on a bit of a mission. Um, and tonight is so key to all of that. Of course, they're not gonna go undefeated. I mean, who knows? But um, I don't think any particular loss is the end of the world per se, but a loss tonight would sting. It would sting in terms of the way momentum is, and simply put, protecting home court is so critical in conference play. But for Rutgers to really ascend through the conference standings now with an opportunity to kind of get back into the middle of the pack, you have to defend your home court. And with Northwestern tonight, followed by Michigan, Maryland, and Ohio State, you have two programs there, Ohio State and Michigan, that essentially are in shambles. Ohio State firing Chris Holtman on Wednesday. And then obviously Maryland's going to be a very tough game. Tonight's going to be a very tough game. And then you have 4 road opportunities. But before I get too far ahead of myself, let's just focus on tonight. Big news with Northwestern. Ty Berry, their top shooting guard, really top shooter, shoots 43% from 3, averages 2.5 makes a game. This is the number 1 3-point shooting team in the Big Ten. They are shooting 43.8% in conference play, which is wild. And he's out for the season. He has torn meniscus in his knee. They just announced it on Wednesday. So big loss for them. Big loss. We know what that means. Meant Penn State was, without Clary, their leading scorer, did not make a difference. But this is a little different. First of all, Northwestern is a tournament team in the sense of, they have their kind of established 6 or 7 guys. It's eerily similar to Rutgers last year in terms of, what this impact could mean to them, losing such a critical piece of what they have this season. And I think, looking back, just applying it to Rutgers last year, the mental toll it takes. That first game after Mawat Mag went down, Caleb McConnell was hurt off and on all last year. And he's returning tonight, by the way, so he's on my brain. He's making his first appearance since since he departed after last season. So that will bring some extra juice to the building. But I think that in terms of Mawat Mag, that first game they played was on the road at Indiana, and they actually played really tough. They lost by 6 points. What I think happens when you lose a key starter for the season and you have tournament aspirations is that it takes a little bit for it to sink in. You might have a little bit of an adrenaline for a couple games, and then all of a sudden, game 3, game 4, the reality hits that you're not the same team, and that roles have to change. And I think that, again, every team is different, but just applying what we saw from Rutgers last year to Northwestern tonight, I think they obviously have Boo Buie, who's one of the best players in the country. He's an old head. He's been through the wars. With the game on the line, there's not many guys in the country that you want the ball in their hands more than Boo Buie. So that's obviously a critical piece of this game. Rutgers, and I'm torn, right? And I'm sure Peichel will throw different guys at Boo Buie. He's having a tremendous year once again. And just in terms of, is it JaMychal Davis? Is it Derek Simpson? You probably get a hard combo of both. I'm almost of the ilk that you contain Buie, but you worry about shutting everybody else down. Because if you contain Barnhizer, Lomborg's a very good 3-point shooter from Princeton transfer. Martinelli's going to get a lot more time now that Barry's out. If you contain the secondary guys, don't allow them to go off and step up for Barry and have career nights. Boo Buie, if he scores 25, but his supporting cast only gets him, 30, 35, it's going to be tough for them to win the game. So you don't want Boo Booey going completely nuts. But I just think that, how they contain Lomborg and Martinelli, to me, is probably more important in this game. Because if those guys go off and have career nights, then and we've seen that before too, right? When the guy's out and then someone else steps up that doesn't normally have a big night, and it's a backbreaker. So we'll see what happens there. In terms of how Northwestern plays, I mean, they are similar to Wisconsin in the sense of, they love to muck it up. They want it slow. I think the thing with Rutgers against Wisconsin on Saturdays, they just physically impose their will, and they wore down Wisconsin mentally. Wisconsin did not want to get into the ring with Rutgers. And, you know, if you've ever played competitive basketball, going against a team that gives such on-ball pressure as Rutgers and full court pressure, there's a mental aspect to it, and I think on the flip side, Northwestern's going to come in with some confidence because they did win at the rack last year. But at the same time, they know they're coming in for a war, and they lost one of their best players. So I all that's to say that I think Rutgers needs to employ the same mindset, the same mentality that they did against Wisconsin in terms of coming out right out of the gate, aggressive, physical, and defensive intensity, being connected right from the get-go. Obviously, shot selection is important as well. But they jumped out to that quick lead against Wisconsin. They brought physicality right from the opening tip, and they kind of put Wisconsin into submission a little bit. At least mentally, where they just, at the second half, you just saw watching them, they did not have it. They did not, they were waiting for the bus. So I don't think Northwestern, to be honest, I think because of a Boo Buoy, you're not going to see that. But at the same time, Northwestern is not a deep rotation. So you're losing your best shooter. They're still a really good 3-point shooting team, but you're losing your best shooter, and you're coming into a physical war against a team that's hot in a hostile environment. And yes, Northwestern has won at Rutgers, but typically they haven't played too great at Rutgers. So I just think the mental psychological part of it is interesting to think about tonight. But the things that stand out the most about Northwestern is, they are a really good 3-point shooting team, and they don't turn the ball over. They have the top turnover rate offensively in the league in terms of just turning it over 12.6%. In terms of their roster, uh, their best guys in terms of not turning it over, Martinelli, who's going to play more, he's 135th nationally with his turnover rate, not just under 10%. Longboard doesn't turn it over. Neither does Barnheiser. Their, other wing who can play well. So, Rutgers, as we know, loves the turnover team. So that's going to be an interesting dynamic. Rutgers right now is the number one defense in terms of efficiency in the Big Ten. They're number one in turnover rate, even surpassing Penn State now, over 20% turnover rate defensively. So Northwestern, slow, doesn't like, to speed up the game on both ends of the floor. They're sub 300 in terms of pace. Rutgers, can they speed up Northwestern the way they sped up Wisconsin with that press, with, switching up the zone some, ball pressure, forcing steals? Cliff had a ton of blocks against Wisconsin. Can he do it again against Northwestern? Rutgers right now number one nationally in non-steal turnovers. So that pressure of the defense for Rutgers, can it create mistakes by Northwestern that maybe are a little uncharacteristic? Obviously, defending the arc, closing out on shooters is going to be critical in this game. One thing that Northwestern does not do well defensively, they're not great defensively, and they foul a lot. So again, going back to the Wisconsin game, the way Rutgers attacked the basket, Jeremiah Williams, the approach of and the way their spacing is and getting to the rim has to be the same tonight. I had Jerry Carino on this week. If you didn't see it, talking about, now it's going to be interesting to see how Big Ten coaches adjust with Jeremiah Williams. There wasn't a lot of game film on him with Rutgers. So now entering game 4, does Chris Collins throw a wrinkle out there? We saw last season teams adjust a little bit to Derek Simpson after he had a couple games of getting to the rim. Are they going to double him? Are they going to, try to play zone? How are they going to try to limit? I'm sure Northwestern's going to try to pack it in, keep Rutgers away from the rim, and force mid-range jump shots. That obviously was a struggle for this team for a lot. But, with Jeremiah Williams, they've been more effective in getting there, getting to the rim. Cliff has been better in space. I just think it's a very similar approach to what they did against Wisconsin. This team's going to have a lot of confidence. Um, they've had a few days off now to get in terms of in between games, get a little bit fresher, and but they have that momentum of the last three games, and this is a real opportunity for them to continue to build off of that. I think that in terms of the matchup, and right now I should mention, so Northwestern is third in offensive efficiency in the Big Ten. Another thing, rebounding. So we know Northwestern can shoot threes. We know they don't turn it over. So those are two keys. We know that they foul a lot. So Rutgers has to get to the line and they have to convert. But Derek Simpson, Jeremiah Williams, Andre Hyatt, Noah Fernandez have to get to the line. They're the best free throw shooters. But also, Northwestern is not a strong rebounding team. And again, that goes into physicality. Rutgers has been tremendous on the glass. The fact that they out-rebounded Wisconsin, who was very good on the glass, that's a big difference in this matchup. Was impressive. Northwestern is just 13th in Big Ten play in offensive rebounding percentage. Rutgers is fourth. So limiting Northwestern to one-shot possessions will be huge in this game. You're going to get some boo-booey isolation. He's a high-volume shooter. Again, limiting the role players, I think, is huge in this game, not allowing open threes. But then on the defensive side, in terms of rebounding, Rutgers is fifth, where Northwestern is eighth. They haven't been terrible, but they're not getting a ton of offensive rebounds. Rutgers, if they can dominate on the boards, that can also help make up for maybe a lack of steals in this game. If they limit Northwestern to one-shot possessions, getting to the foul line, Rutgers has been shooting much better from the free throw line lately. It's 81% the last three games, but not a lot of attempts. 30 of 37 over the last three games. Have to get to the line more. I think this is a game you need to get 20-plus attempts, simply the way Northwestern fouls while defending. And I think that'd be a big key. Obviously, whenever either team gets into the bonus is important, but for Rutgers, I think they have a chance to really dominate in that area tonight with their approach, with how they attack the rim and get into the lane. Don't settle for mid-range jumpers and just continue to share the basketball. I think, again, perimeter shots are going to be there later in the game. I've talked about this week. I did a podcast on just what I think the key for this team's ceiling is. And I think that's three-point shooting. It's very interesting dynamic that essentially your three best three-point shooters are coming off the bench now, and Andre Hyatt, Noah Fernandez, and Gavin Griffiths. So I think as they come in, there's going to be opportunities there if you establish, your ability to drive early in the game. And in that second half, when they come in, for that run, I think there's an opportunity there. So can they deliver? Can they make shots? I think if Rutgers can get to that 5 or 6 make mark per game, it's going to be a huge boost for them. You obviously don't want to let Northwestern go off from three. I think that 3-point margin is something to watch for as well. So this is, it's a huge game. There's no understating it for Rutgers. Northwestern, obviously, another thing to note, they are 1-5 on the road in Big Ten play this year. They've lost 4 in a row. So that is key in thinking about this matchup. They won at Penn State. They won at DePaul earlier this year by 10 early in the season, but they've lost 4 in a row on the road. So that is certainly encouraging. There's a lot of things on paper to say, all right, Rutgers, I think they should win this game. Ken Palm, they don't account for the injury. They have it at 50-50. And they actually have Northwestern winning by 1 point. I think Rutgers is favored by 2.5 points. But this is an opportunity. This is a game that Rutgers, frankly, to continue their upward ascension in the Big Ten and the good mojo, and to continue to build confidence and, kind of rejuvenate themselves in the second half of the season. They need this game. And I think a big part of what Jeremiah Williams has brought is their mentality, or changed is their mentality. They haven't been playing tight. They've been playing loose. I love Caleb McConnell. I'm sure he's going to come in. Listen, Caleb McConnell probably going to stand in front of the team and say, listen, they ruined my senior night last year. Go out and get payback. So I think that's part of it too. So I expect, a high intensity effort. Obviously, it's going to come down to execution. But I think the defensive pressure of Rutgers can get Northwestern uncomfortable. The mental aspects of not having Barry there, and I think just in terms of how they match up, Rutgers has to win the battle on the boards. They need to make their free throws and get to the line. They need to close out on shooters. And they need to, whatever turnovers they do get, they need to take advantage of. I think, the more they could speed Northwestern up, the more they can get out and transition. It's not how Northwestern wants to play. So just get them as uncomfortable as possible. The RAC faithful, the RAC crowd will be there behind them. It's going to be a great environment. 6:30 BTN Thursday. Doing this pretty early in the morning. Had a little bit of coffee. Hope you're watching this while you have your coffee or throughout the day, whatever. I'll be back with my rapid reaction. I might be a little late tonight because I work, and 6:30 tip is tough when you have kids and stuff, and I don't even know when I'm getting home from work. But I will have a rapid reaction as soon as I'm done watching the game. Hopefully, it won't be too late after the game tonight, but look out for that. And hopefully, we're talking about a continued run for Rutgers. And thanks for listening and watching the Scarlet Faithful podcast once again.